when there's a time of crisis like we are facing here, that's the moment for the church to be salt and light. That's the moment when we can show the difference. Everyone's going on about, we need revival, we need revival. Well, you want revival? This is how it happens.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast, learning how to follow Jesus in a post-Christian world. My name is Ben Pierce. I am joined today by David Pierce, my dad, and Luke Greenwood, the other regular. Chad Johnson. I like that. The little restrained yo and yip. Chad Johnson's normally part of this. He forms the quad, but he is on the road right now. This, as I often say, but I think it's worth mentioning always, this podcast is part of a missions organization, and we reach and disciple people who will not walk into a church. And we do that by raising up young missional leaders who are passionate about reaching their generation. And we're active in 264 cities around the world. What is it, Luke?
Something like that. Yeah. It's spread all around.
It's 270.
Okay. 270. It's spread all around Eurasia, Europe, South America, North America, Middle East. It's amazing. Like there's so many cool things happening
all over
around.
Eurasia.
Yeah.
David finds that funny for some reason. He's really particular about the way geography is used.
I think that sounds funny, don't you? No one says Eurasia, by the way. They say Russia, but we say Eurasia.
Well,
why do we
to make it clear, it is Belarus, Russia, Kazakhstan, Georgia.
Yeah, but no one says that.
I said a tight first 5 minutes. Show some self-control. All right, so we are in over 270 cities around the world,
including Russia.
Reaching those who will not walk into a church. It's a really awesome and exciting mission, and this podcast just amplifies that. We've been doing this for a while. David founded this mission. Would you say late 70s or early 80s? Probably early 80s to be
83.
Safe, right? 83. Okay. So now, has all the stickers.
Wait a minute, I have on my shirt.
You have it on your shirt? Okay.
What does it say?
You can't see it.
83, yes. This is Georgian.
We'll take your word for it.
We started this mission the year before I was born.
That's
1983.
Crazy. It was for you, Luke.
That's when Luke was like a little floating nad in a petri dish.
Weird. Okay, so 1983, this mission started. If you go to steiger.org, you can see our fancy new website, steiger.org. We have amazing people in this mission, in design, in web, in graphics, in video, and they have combined their strengths like Captain Planet to make an epic website. So go check that out.
Ooh.
Today,
old school reference.
What's going to happen today is we're going to be talking, we're going to continue the conversation that we started last week about the situation in Minneapolis with ICE and immigration, the tension, the riots, all of the unrest. If you did not check out that conversation, I'd recommend you pause and go back because these really will work together. But the fundamental question that I want to answer today is, why do people think Christians don't care? This is not a new accusation, but I want to play a video here in a second that is incredibly visceral and hard to watch. It's of a group of protesters who storm into a church in St. Paul, this sort of conjoining city here. It's Minneapolis, St. Paul, right next to each other, and make that basic accusation in a very inflammatory way. So I'm going to play that video for us here in a second.
And Ben, this is actually some of our Steiger team attend this church, right? It's the same church.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It's so, because when they started saying that happened, I was like, what? No, really? And then all of a sudden you start to see all the viral videos and you're like, wow, that's very, very intense. So it's a real place, real people, and it really did happen. So we're going to play that. And we're just going to address the broader growing perception in culture that Christians are indifferent, that they're disengaged or selectively outraged. And why does the world so often feel as though we don't care? And so we're going to look at that because I think it's crucial. I don't think it's something that we can just dismiss. We're certainly going to be talking about maybe some of the counter arguments to that I think are worth bringing up, but then ending with what I believe is at least what Jesus's heart would be in the situation. And David and Luke will obviously also bring their perspectives into the mix. Looking forward to that conversation. Then we're going to end. This is new. So if you have been part of this for a long time, bear with me. I know change is hard, but we're going to end with David's random story. We're going to end every episode that way. If you don't know what that is, it's a short, delightful tale from the life and mind of David Pierce. It is often random, as the title would suggest. Will it connect? Sometimes. Does it have to? No. This is postmodernism after all. And he'll wrap the whole thing up in a nice bow with a tale from his life at the end of the episode. So you're going to want to stick around all the way to the end, because many people call it the best part of the entire show. No exaggeration. A lot of people say that. And certainly it produces a healthy creative tension that you're going to both love, revel in, and be inspired by. Right, David?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I liked your explanation. It made me feel ready to, because now I'm really ready to go. It's going to be hard for me to wait to the end after that.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to. You're going to have to. The best things are worth waiting for. Okay, so I'm going to play this video. Again, for context, we're here in Minneapolis. I am. So is David. He's right through that wall right there. Luke is in Poland. We are an international podcast and mission. But this particular situation in Minneapolis is very, very tense. Just to give you the 30-second recap, in case, I don't know how you'd have missed this, but in case you have. So federal agents have been sent en masse to Minneapolis in the last, month now, maybe 3 weeks, to deal with what the current political administration would see as a breach of the border. We have, in their minds, a lot of immigration, illegal immigrants in cities all over the U.S. And our current president has decided this is the way he's going to try to extract and deal with that. Increasingly, there has been what I would argue is virtually undeniable example after example of really gross overreaches of power and abuses. There's widespread fear. There's distrust. It's really created a tension in the city I don't think felt since the days of George Floyd here. And it's really divided people and even Christians, certain Christians saying, no, it's all not true. They're just here to remove violent criminals. Other Christians saying, what are you talking about? I mean, every day, there's more and more stories of people being indiscriminately picked up, and then as Chad said last week, even if they're let go, it's this very harrowing experience of being treated like an illegal person. And, it's a very militaristic, aggressive approach by and large. And there is lies on both sides, exaggerations on both sides. The truth is rarely as clear and clean as either polarity wants to make it out to be. But it is undeniable that it is a real hard, tough situation. And I don't think you can be a follower of Jesus and just be like, I think it's all just lies, or I don't care. I think this grieves the heart of God. And it does lead into and amplify the perception that Christians don't care when we just turn this into a detached political situation, when I personally know people who fit the description of those that ICE are pursuing, not from an illegal perspective or criminal perspective, but literally a profiling perspective, who are afraid, whose lives have been affected by, if nothing else, the fear that the approach has created in the culture and in the climate of our city. So I'm going to play this video of these protesters storming a church in St. Paul. I just want you to listen to it. It's pretty intense. And then we'll kind of answer the key question, why do people think Christians don't care? So.
Renee good! Renee good! Renee good! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot!
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. So in the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nikema stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so,
where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? You have no comment. Exactly. You... Renee, good. Renee, good.
We have a duty to work. We must love and support one another.
All these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit as a preacher. Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No. Jesus would dine with immigrants. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
So there you have it.
Rough. That's rough. I hadn't seen it before. That is pretty.
Well, how does it hit you?
I was just thinking all the time, what would I do if I was, in the church and, these guys are coming in and yelling. I mean, there's not much. I was just trying to think, there's not much you can do because they're obviously, very angry and vocal. And maybe the best thing is to, at that point in time, let them vent and then talk when things calm down. But I was just trying to think about that, how to react to that. That's pretty intense.
Well, there's certain churches in the U.S. that they would not dare try that in. They definitely picked an easy target because there's a lot of churches. I mean, not that would have been good. It would have been way worse. It's actually kind of amazing that there was so much restraint showed by those parishioners. They didn't seem to really react. They didn't seem to yell. I mean, they did the right thing in that sense, as you said. But man, there are a lot of people where that could have escalated really, really bad. Right. I mean, you start to see later, like he's like filming kids. He's like, you bring your kids to this stuff. Like, I mean,
it's out of order.
It is. And there'd be dads, and I wouldn't blame them, who'd be like, nah, this is not happening. Yeah. So anyway, so what do you think, David?
Yeah, I think it's obviously shows how serious the whole situation is. I mean, I don't think no matter how strongly you feel about something, you have a right to go into a church and disrupt the church service. I think that's protected speech from what I understand. So and again, they're saying, where are you, and why aren't you out doing this and that? But a lot of those guys that are protesting a lot of what they do is virtual signaling. They're not really doing anything either. So it's kind of hypocritical. I mean, not many of them are really making big sacrifices. That one guy that's being interviewed, he's just going around getting all kinds of media attention from just screaming at people and screaming at ICE. But I don't know what he practically does for the Latino community that he was talking about, or the Somalian community. I'm not really sure if he actually does anything. So to me, it's not just screaming at people in a church or, and again, I think we need to look at ourselves too. Part of when I see that is, okay, if you're in Minneapolis right now and you're part of a local church, what are you doing? I think it does require something from us. If we follow Jesus, we do need to respond and like Jesus would. And I don't think he would just act like nothing's happening. He would definitely be responding, like we talked about in the last podcast. So I think it does also can make me think, what are we doing in Minneapolis to show that what Jesus feels about this situation?
And I think it also, two things that kind of really bother me about it is, well, number one, as you said, David, we should be doing something, and I find it really unfair because a lot of the concept of doing something for minority groups or for caring for the community and helping and serving people comes from the Christian church throughout history and including now. And so it's kind of a weird thing to pick on for the Minneapolis context, a small church on the smaller side, and to walk in and to yell at them like that, it's kind of weird to me. And I can't imagine protesters doing that to general audience on the street. So that bothers me as well, that they felt like for some reason, because these are a bunch of Christians, we can treat them that way, where you wouldn't usually, it's unusual to see protesters on the street come up to general audience and yell at them like that, like, why aren't you doing something? It's it's a very odd thing to do, in my opinion. So those things bother me about it. But I agree with you, David, that it's part of our calling and culture and ethos as followers of Jesus to be involved in serving the community around us and helping people.
Yeah, I would, there's a couple angles I want to take. I don't ultimately want to have a defensive tone. And I think that there's going to be a Jesus perspective I want to bring into this that I think is crucial, that kind of overlays all of this. But I do think it's worth at least addressing some of the inconsistencies and hypocrisy of this approach, because I want to at least affirm those who listen to this and feel a little bit defensive or feel like, I do care. Like, what do you mean? Why do Christians not care? Or the way that this was done. And obviously you can find a ton of things about it that are really not right. The way that it was done, also just sort of picking on this, like you said, this small church, making all of these accusations. And I think ultimately, if I want to, well, let me just also give this context. Supposedly, and I think it may have been confirmed or not, I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think also that part of their context was that the pastor was an ICE agent, apparently, which I find odd, but maybe he was. Maybe I should have looked into that a little bit more carefully, but that was part of their justification, not that it provided any justification. In fact, there are significant laws that they broke, which is, you're not like, there's a law called the FACE law. It's like an acronym. And essentially it's, you're not allowed to prevent people from getting medical care. And often that was used to prevent anti-abortion protesters from blocking people from going in to get abortions. But it also extends to religious activities. Like, you can't, as a protester, disrupt or prevent someone from going to their place of worship. So there's significant federal laws that have actually been broken in this case. And I think that they're going to get in some significant trouble for having.
They will, because it's totally against the.
Yeah, it's illegal. And I think,
and again, they chose a church that wasn't. It was such a. They're not heroic at all. I mean, to go to a little church like that and to do,
or brave or courageous,
I mean, it's
or
just,
anything.
It's a joke.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so that, with that context aside, I do think it's worth mentioning some of the aspects of this that are inconsistent. And I think the first one is that this idea that if I am not concerned equally, if I am not sacrificing equally at all times for all issues, then I am guilty of the accusation that I don't care. I mean, that's just absurd. Like, how much is that guy doing for the war in Ukraine, or the poverty in Southeast Asia, or the whatever? I mean, there are literally 1 million.
Yeah, but Ben, isn't it different when it's in your neighborhood? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but even then,
but you're in Minneapolis right now. I think it's different than just saying, yeah, but there's all kinds of issues like the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, but that premise, ultimately that premise is flawed, because how can you truly live up to that accusation? There was 1,000 injustices happening before any of this was happening. There's your street is rife with problems that need to be dealt with, addiction and issues and violence and poverty and homelessness. There's always things happening. So if you're simply going to make the argument that because this is in the news and this is a more prevalent issue.
No, but the big question is, how am I being salt and light? You know, like what Jesus said in Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth. The salt has lost its taste. How shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. The city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so they may see your good works. So it's about good works. And then because of that, they'll give glory to the Father when they hear our message. So I do think there needs to be some good works in me if I'm a Jesus follower to validate. So I don't think it's just about
no, but obviously, but again, this requires way more nuance than that. You are one human being with 24 hours in the day, with a calling, with giftings, with a certain mandate from God, and to suggest that you can jump on someone at a particular moment in time and say, what are you doing about the plight of your Latin brothers? That guy. But let's not, let's ignore the extremes here. And the heart of it is not right.
Of course, I mean, the guy is a paper warrior. He likes to talk about himself like he's a big revolutionary, and he's given all these speeches in the media about the revolution will die. They can come and kill me if they want. I don't care. But he says that so bravely because they won't, because we're not in a...
Yeah. But this is a little bit of what I'm trying to just bring a little sanity into this conversation. Like I said, we will get to the part of this conversation where we talk about, yes, we need to care. We need to respond. We need to do something. But it's a rhetorical game, a disingenuous game to say that because you don't care about the thing I care about in the way that I care about it, that somehow invalidates you as a Christian or a person that is empathetic towards the plight of the world. I can't possibly care about all things at all times, or I would just live pinned to the ground in guilt. I could spend my 24 hours a day and every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears I have and still not solve 1% of the 100% of problems that exist in my city. That's not an excuse, but we can't approach it like that. That's not going to solve anything. If we feel like a certain issue is not being properly responded to by followers of Jesus, then let's talk about it. Let's ask in a positive way, what more could I do? Or what am I not doing that I should be doing? But I know this is an extreme approach, but a subtle undercurrent of this is a common rhetorical trick. It reminds me of when the Black Lives Matter thing was a more popular sentiment, and regardless of how the entity of itself end up being exposed and all that, the essence of what it was saying was, of course, true, right? Black Lives Matter. And there was a certain moment in history where it was okay to emphasize that, where that needed to be emphasized. And as a Christian, of course, we believe that on its statement. And I'm not talking about the organization and all the other things about it, purely the statement and the concept and the emphasis, right? But then a lot of Christians would snap back with, well, all lives matter, and you would have that sort of rhetorical response. And it was a different version of the same issue, which is like, well, if you don't care about all lives, you can't say you only care about this particular thing. And I'm like, these aren't good faith ways of trying to be better at solving problems. These are rhetorical tricks to judge people. And I'm saying, unless we kind of parse that out, we're not going to make any progress.
I think ultimately, maybe one of the most important questions here is what can and should be done about any cause or situation that comes in front of us. And the truth is that on all sides of the arguments, there's a lack of actual action, right? Because you can have, a protester who's like that, as you were saying, David, a lot of it's virtual signaling, and it's like, suddenly I feel part of something, and I'm going to fight for something, and I'm the one who's got a voice against this or pro that, and people get behind it out of kind of there's this motivation, but it's protesting for protest's sake, and then you can see validity in criticism towards theoretical Christianity and Christians sitting in churches learning about caring for the poor and not doing enough about it. So you could throw that accusation all around, and the big point there is what actually is being done and what is valid action to bring change in the world. And I'd say neither of those sides could really, that's not happening. So we need to, maybe the most important thing is to get down to what can we actually do, or what is actually worthwhile time bring a difference. And I'd say, looking at, for instance, the context there of Minneapolis and different immigrant communities and the whole cultural mix that you get in almost any urban center nowadays, the church has historically and does today really engage with that. It's part of kind of the Christian culture to go, how can we help poorer communities, or how can we help in different cultures and stuff, and bring people together. And so those are the kind of actions that should be emphasized. Like, okay, is there some real work being done? Are their lives being changed? Are their communities being changed? And who's doing it? And I think that's what we should be looking at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as followers of Jesus, we have been given a worldview that affirms us in a way that is really powerful and unique. And it's this: I'm imperfect and that's okay, right? And that doesn't mean I'm apathetic about the things that need to change in my life. But what's so beautiful about following Jesus is that I can both accept that I'm a hypocrite and always will be, that I have value in my identity as Christ, and then motivated by that value, strive to grow, strive to change, strive to deal with the selfishness in my heart and the coldness of my heart. Because in the absence of that affirmation, it becomes this really like a hopeless situation. And I can understand why you'd be defensive. If the value you felt like you had was predicated on the perception of your virtue from the outside, then I have to maintain that perception that I'm perfect, that I have all the right ideas, that I'm not what they say I am. I'm not saying this as an apathetic rhetorical trick at all. It's fine to say, yeah, I'm a hypocrite. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm not all that I should be. I'm actually able to do that, unlike other people. I'm able to say, I'm not perfect, nor will I ever be perfect. And from that place of grace I didn't deserve, I can now look at what this nut bar is saying and go, okay, does he have a point? Because really his approach does not deserve a rational dialogue. That approach deserves outright dismissal because he's being so caustic, so unreasonable. He's not listening. He's not being fair. He's not being nuanced. And everyone with a rational brain would say, just dismiss that nut bar. What I'm saying is that the power of a follower of Jesus is that we should be so secure in being image bearers of God that we can even look at a guy like that and say, okay, this is the ultimate turn the cheek moment. I can say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, can you imagine if he would have said, I mean, it's hard to, when that suddenly happens to you, but if he would have said, you're right, we need to do a better job, that would have diffused everything.
Well, I don't think it would have, because it wouldn't have given him what he wanted.
No, and also it's true. I mean, we can always do better. I have a friend, he used to be our drummer from he lives in Australia right now. He's a DJ, Ken Green. Anyway,
go on.
So he and his buddy they're on this well-known radio station, and they would call up pastors. It's terrible, but they would call up pastors at 4:00 in the morning and record it, and they'd act like they needed help.
Oh no!
So they'd call like a pastor up at like 4 in the morning and go, "Pastor, help me! I don't have, my car broke down or whatever, just some kind of thing. I need you to help me." And then the pastor would go, "What are you doing calling me at 4:00 in the morning? Who is this?" And then would hang up on him. And then they would play that on the radio and say, "You've just heard from Pastor so-and-so from this church." And so
it's kind of epic, but really mean too.
It is slightly
You
epic.
have a point?
But the point is, yes, it's epic, but also the point is, when I'm a pastor, when I take the authority of a spiritual leader, I'm held to a standard that requires me to be like Jesus. And yes, we're all flawed, and none of us loves perfectly, and the needs of the world are overwhelming. However, I think when I'm a pastor in Minneapolis during this time, I need to really seek God about how I can be Jesus in this situation. And I think that's true no matter if you don't have to be in Minneapolis during this time in history. That goes everywhere. It makes me think of, it makes me think of one of the first times I went to Poland, and it was when it was still communist, and the police were, it was during everyone in Poland was a punk during that time, and they're beating up all these, these guys. They'd say, like, friend of mine, they stopped them and they said, "All right, you either take out your earrings or we're going to beat you for every earring you have." Because to be a punk was to stand up against the government. And he goes, go ahead, beat me. Unlike this guy that, went into this
Poser
church.
protester.
Yeah, really paper pretend warrior. These guys really were revolutionary guys, really got beaten up and stuff. But then this priest said, come to my church. They can't do anything to you here. Serve them tea and bread. Let them sleep in the church.
The punks.
Yeah, the punks. And they just said, just open it up. Come on in. You can sleep here. We'll give you, tea and bread, and we'll look after you. Well, guess what? They all wanted to go to the church because because he was showing this love and this revolutionary thing in a time of crisis. And it gave them such authority because of that, and I could go on about that more. But I think that when there's a time of crisis like we are facing here, and there's a lot of crises going on. We're just talking about Minneapolis right now. I mean, we have people in our mission in Venezuela and other, crazy stuff going on. That's the moment for the church to be salt and light. That's the moment when we can show the difference. That's the moment that we can see. Everyone's going on about, we need revival. Well, you want revival? This is how it happens. And then it comes with a cost. It's not cost free. And so I think that these are great moments. And right now, man, if the church would know how to respond to this and not just take a political view on one way or the other, but really ask God, this could be unbelievable, the fruit that could come from a time like this.
Yeah, that's convicting, because, I think my gut reaction to this is while I ultimately feel like I have a Jesus perspective on this, initially I want to kind of dismantle the fallacies in all of this, right? Like I initially mentioned, this idea that you can't honestly be expected to care equally for everything at all times. That's not a human prospect. That's impossible. And then there's other things like looking at the extensive force that Christianity has been for good throughout history. And there's just abundant evidence. If you want to read books like Tom Holland's Dominion or other books like that, there's just so much evidence, whether it comes to orphan care or hospitals or care during plagues or infant rescue or dignifying women or care for the disabled or prison reform, charity, and on and on and on. Judeo-Christianity has been this extraordinary agent for good. And I could want to use all of that in a way to just say, so rest on that and be like, it's okay. I do what you can. And yes, challenge your own cold-heartedness. But I think what you're bringing to the forefront here that I think is really vital is that extraordinary times call for a different standard from followers of Jesus, and that these are actually unique moments in history. And even some of the significant reform that I mentioned and listed was brought in moments of extraordinary historical challenge. I mean, you think of the Black Plague and monks running into that mess. We talked a lot about that during COVID, but even just the dominance of the Roman rule and these really brave followers of Jesus who were rescuing babies.
You need to, not everyone is a historian, just briefly talk about what they did, how they would run into the Black Plague. But a lot of people don't know what you mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages in Europe, and it killed like a third of the world's population. They had no idea how to stop it or how to save people from it. And so, of course, people would just, having no idea how it spread, mass fear spread, and people just bailed and abandoned those that were sick. And monks were of the only part of the population that actually would care for the sick, risking their own lives. It was this extraordinary sacrifice, and a lot of them became sick themselves and died as a result. So this is what Christians are called to: radical countercultural action in the face of crisis. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it definitely is convicting.
I'm using my, because I'm dealing with my health stuff right now, why I'm not more involved in that kind of thing. But I do think if you're listening to this, and you're, wherever you are, because you have your own Minneapolis thing happening, your own crisis thing going on somewhere around the world right now, man, this is the best time, and it doesn't, God will help. when I come to him and I say, God, give me your heart, because I don't care. I'm selfish. I don't want to run into a plague where I might get sick, right? Why would I want to do that? I don't want to be in a difficult situation. I don't want difficulty. However, if I'm honest and I bring that before God honestly and say, but there's this crisis happening right now, would you give me your eyes? Would you let me see it? And then show me what to do. And often I get intimidated about doing anything because I think I have to do some big, huge thing. And it's not true. It's a small thing usually. And it might grow into a big thing, but it's a very small thing that God will ask me to do. It's not huge. It's not so difficult. It might mean just bringing a cup of coffee to somebody at a protest and saying, or it might mean, it'll be something that I can handle. But I'll tell you, this is a time, and it's everywhere in the world now. We're seeing this kind of crisis, a lot of places anyway. It's a time to act, I think, and to run into it, not away from it. Let's not go hide in the woods somewhere, but let's go to the heart. Let's go to where things are happening.
I agree, and I think one thing to add as well is those examples you guys have shared, whether it's from history or David, you were giving examples even more recently, and just like the priest in Poland and all of those stories of somebody really doing something significant, often starting from a small step. It really is in contrast to a lot of the current scene that we see with this political polarization, and I feel like that's a big part of the problem. Maybe one of the reasons those protesters stormed into the church is because of that polarization, right? There's an assumption. I know you're saying that there was something about one of the pastors in the church being a police officer or linked to it or somehow, but there's this general view of like, oh, the Christians, they'll be of this political conviction, and so they'll be about this, and then the liberal left wing is about that, and so that polarization also destroys the kind of real revolutionary attitude that you guys are talking about, because people just start taking sides and it gets all confusing. I think a true follower of Jesus, living out, being salt and light, like the verse you read, David, in our time, will not fit in those categories. And that's something I think really important to remember in this. It's not gonna, you're not gonna do something by picking a side and then being really great at defending and fighting for that. You've got to step outside of that. And I was thinking about this earlier this week. I had a trip to Germany, which is just next door to Poland, for those that don't know. And so it was just visiting, an event that was happening there. And I was in a town in Germany that's this really beautiful old town, and it's got an amazing history because it was one of the places that Luther went to defend the change he was bringing in the church and in theology at that time. But I was walking around this town, and the oldest Christian university in the world is in this town. And there's an incredible story of like just how the university formed so many people that went to change the world and all this kind of thing. And I'm walking around this town, and it's still got lots of university students, but very little of Christianity. And I was just walking around just thinking about that. Like at first I was kind of discouraged, and I was like, man, we're in this country that has had such a rich history and brought so much change, and the gospel was preached, and this university was founded to teach the gospel and to bring change in society. And where is that now? And why is that not there? But then as I was just kind of praying and thinking over that, I had this sense of like God reminding me what his kingdom is really about, and that it doesn't fit the molds and the categories of this world. There's the image that came to my mind was one that the gospel and the kingdom of God is like this powerful straight line going in the direction that is God's will, and the world is here kind of parallel, and it's kind of going backwards and forwards with crisis after crisis and different stuff. And the power of God and the kingdom and the gospel will interact with that. It will bring change. It'll bring hope into darkness and into difficult places. But ultimately, there's nothing that will stop it. There's nothing that stops, God's kingdom moving forward and growing. And I think that that's part of what Jesus was teaching when he was saying, You're not of this world. You're in this world, but you're not of this world. And you should be salt and light in this world, but you're not playing the same game that this world is. And I feel like that's an important thing to remember. If we can set ourselves aside from the polarization, the politics, and those confusions, and say, I'm about Jesus and doing what Jesus would do in this situation, and that's often going to be really countercultural to any of the political sides. And maybe we can start then acting in more authentic care and love that we learn from him.
Yeah, and I would say, don't take the bait. Don't get sucked into the polarities. Don't allow the enemy to rob you of a moment where you're supposed to do something of significance. And look, it is a complex issue, and there are lies on both sides, and there are goons like this guy who are trying to pull you into those polarities. But I think as followers of Jesus, we need to get a little bit more simple, because look, I don't care where you are on this spectrum. You can be the Christian who thinks that every ICE agent is from the devil and it's just nonstop 24 hours a day abuse. Or you can think the other end of the spectrum that no, they're all just doing the perfect will of God. Whatever you think, the fact of the matter is, this is a unique moment in history and culture where you can be Jesus to people in a way that they need. So I don't even care what you believe about this. What you shouldn't do, what you're not excused from, is stepping out and making a difference. Like, just ignore the polarities and the divisions and the fighting. I think of Romans 12, 17 through 21. And I'm like, imagine if we would take this goon who yelled at those people and respond like this. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you're honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. It says, dear friends, never take revenge. Because a lot of people are like, we should, respond to a guy like that and take our own revenge. It says, dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. And then this, instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. And I just love that practical, simple response. You got these Roman Christians living in this persecution, and Paul saying to them, don't do what they do. Don't get pulled into what they do. Respond like Jesus. Feed them. Give them water for their thirst. Give them clothes. Be Jesus to them. And that, in so doing, you will make an extraordinary difference in the midst of a crisis.
Yeah, I wrote, it reminds me, I think it was you and Aaron, Luke, you went to that gay pride thing in New Zealand.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was Aaron's whole vision. Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah. And to give out water to everyone at the gay parade.
Yeah.
The gay pride parade. And on it said, come to me, those of you who are thirsty, and you will never thirst. Or what was the scripture?
That was the scripture. And also Aaron called them before and asked if we could come serve. That was a really important move. Like, he called and said, hey, we want to come and help and clean up and that kind of thing.
Yeah. But here's the important point. He didn't say that we agree with the idea that there's not God's idea about sexuality.
Yeah.
You didn't do that. But you came and you did, and on the glass of water, it said, anyone who comes to me will never thirst again, Jesus.
Yeah, you said that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I said that. Sorry. But the point is, you went, you served, but you didn't like quit having standards. It's like, I think this is where people get lost in this. They think, okay, we just need to not have any beliefs as a Christian. Everything is okay. There's nothing, there's no right, there's no wrong. We talked about in the last podcast where I said, I think if a doctor cuts off the breasts of a 22-year-old girl, he's a monster. And I still think he's a monster. So I think there is evil. I think there's evil things that people do. However, it's like the Salvation Army. William Booth preached. Those guys were psycho preachers of the gospel. They just were but they were involved in caring for the needs of the people in the city, the poor. They were they did all homeless shelters. They did all kinds of things to help in a practical way to be Jesus in the streets of London, in other places. And they were real warriors. They actually got beaten up and by the because they were going against the system, boldly preaching the gospel, but slowly they lost that and just became about social justice, and they left the gospel out of it. So I don't know if I'm confusing things here, but I think that we are supposed to get involved in caring, but caring does not mean we stop preaching the gospel.
Right.
No, but then again, that's where I am saying that we don't cede territory to either side, right? So we don't go onto the extreme of saying, well, they're all wrong and they're idiots, so I'm going to do nothing. On the other end of the spectrum, you completely adapt and conform your theology to fit the world so that you can perfectly align yourself with that. You stick to your standards, you stick to what you believe is true, and then you serve like Jesus. And you don't get distracted by those things, because the needs are real. People need Jesus. They would have said that before all this, so why does that not still count now? In fact, now they need to know who Jesus is even more. And so to me, there's just a beautiful simplicity in knowing that we have been given the truth. We know what's true. Christians have this rich history and legacy of stepping into crises and making a huge difference. And that should continue. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, for those who accuse Christianity of being an agent of evil and a negative blight on the world are just idiots. They just don't know history. We've had Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man actor, but the author, brilliant author and historian. He wrote a book called Dominion. And there's two just banger quotes that I got to read because they're just so dang good. And this is a non-Christian historian talking about the impact of Christianity on culture. He says this: to live in a Western country is to live in a society still utterly saturated by Christian concepts and assumptions. That these should be so often unrecognized, even by those who most pride themselves on having rejected Christianity, is itself a measure of just how successful the Christian revolution has been. I mean, think about that. He's basically saying that the very people who pride themselves of having rejected Christianity stand on Judeo-Christian values. In fact, they'll judge other Christians on the basis of the very things they inherited from Jesus, like every person being an image bearer of God and the value of every human life and the need for fighting for justice on the basis of objective right and wrong. Here's another one that's great. What modern people tend to assume is self-evident, that every human life possesses an equal and intrinsic value, was an idea that required centuries of Christian labor to make seem so obvious. This is our heritage. So let's not abandon it. Let's lean into it. Let's not get caught up. We don't have to grant them that their view of us is accurate. Let's prove them wrong with our love. Let's prove them wrong like the monks did, and let's make a difference. Let's step into the mess. Let's tell people about Jesus. Let's serve needs, and let's not waste this moment in history getting caught up in just algorithmically amplified polar nonsense arguments, because that's what most people are doing and calling reaction.
And I also think that we briefly mentioned it already, but I just think, and it would be hard to react on the moment for this pastor, for example, because he was foreseeably, or not first. I mean, he was
Visibly.
He was forceful. He was forceful back, which I understand to the guy.
Kind of, not really.
Well, a bit. Anyway, the point though is, I think it would have been, and we've already said this, but I just want to say it again because it kind of really, I think it's so amazing, is if he would have just said, "You're right. We can do better," you know. And when when I'm in a situation like there's a huge power in apology. You know, I've had where I've been involved in trying to, like, I've had to change a lot of tickets and stuff, and I'm dealing with a lot of airlines about changing some flights and stuff, and it's super frustrating. And I can remember I was in this one call for like an hour waiting, and I was really impatient, and I reacted really aggressively and impatiently. And then I felt convicted. And I said to the person, "Hey, I'm sorry. I should not have talked to you that way. You know, I know it's not your fault. Would you forgive me?" And the person was just like, they almost started crying on the phone, you know. But there's something about saying, "Okay, I can do better," or "Yeah, I'm not perfect." You were saying that, Ben, in the beginning. You know, we're not going to do everything right, but that would be so huge if we could have that posture of humility. And yeah, that's a good, I can, even if the person is saying it in a completely inappropriate way, or even like I was dealing with some of these airlines that were not just doing the right thing. And I was, I think there's something about having a humility as a Jesus follower that the world doesn't know and would be a huge testimony to people. I also
want to add that, like, I mean, as a foreigner visiting the US every year, being in Minneapolis every year, one thing that's interesting to me in all of this story is I've been to many churches in Minneapolis, and I think it's important to state that there's so many really amazing things happening and being done by countless churches there that are that's kind of their big focus. They want to do something for the community around them, or they want to go and serve all over the world. I mean, let's be honest. Of course, there's stuff for us to grow and learn and improve and change, and there's always we can always get comfortable, in our suburban churches and all that kind of thing. But let's be honest, like, there's also so much good being done, and that needs to not be forgotten in this situation. And I guess to also reemphasize or just emphasize the importance of the church and what that is. I mean, the beauty of a community of people coming together in faith and to worship God, and to say, what can we do together to bring change, and how can we raise money to give to people in our community to help the community? How can we raise money to go and help countries around the world that are suffering? I mean, how much money is raised from churches in Minneapolis alone for causes all over the world? And I think it's easy to lose sight of what that reality is when he's, with the kind of criticism that came down there. So I just want to make that point. It's like,
agreed. And let me just end with this, and then we got to transition on here, and we get on to other things. But I said at the beginning that following Jesus gives you the basis for then having the assuredness of your own value and worth and salvation, that you can then go out into the world and be imperfect and try again and get up and apologize. That's possible because of who Jesus is and what he has done for us. You mentioned Martin Luther. He has this great quote. He says, "We are not righteous because we do righteous deeds, but we have been made righteous." Sorry, let me say it again. We are not righteous because we do righteous deeds, but having been made righteous, we do righteous deeds. And that really does, that's not a distinction without a difference. It matters that, I'm loved by God. And so now I can look at myself honestly, flaws and all, failures and all, and be ruthless with those. Apologize to the protesters shouting in my face. In the absence of that kind of grace, I don't know, that would be really, really hard to do. And I think that is a unique superpower that followers of Jesus have. So when we react defensively, it's like, come on, draw on the grace that you've been given. Be like the parable of the debtor who recognizes the unforgivable debt that has been forgiven for you, and then return that favor to a world that does not know that truth and does not have that grace, because I think that would make a significant difference. So, all right. Well, I don't know what we'll talk about next week. We might move on to something else, or the story might evolve, and we'll just continue this conversation. We really appreciate you. But we really need to conclude this in a way that I think brings a little bit of clarity in amidst all of the confusion that Luke has brought to this conversation. And so David is he's gonna wrap us up in a way that's gonna send us off into our days and weeks and weekends with levity, love, and libations.
David's random story.
What are libations?
There's a couple of things that I want to highlight. One is, I've always tried to figure out something that Ben could do, like that he could have some kind of
meaning in life.
So when he was in high school, he got a job at a BP. It's a
British Petroleum.
You know this?
Yeah, British Petroleum. Yeah.
You know this, right, Luke?
I have a lot to say.
I don't know this story. No. This is new to me.
I'm going to let you
excited.
go. And then...
I'm getting excited because I'm like, I haven't heard this story yet.
So, and it was quite cool.
Right?
Ben was really proud because he wore his little shirt with it said BP on it. So he'd go around,
Ben,
you know what I mean? And he thought, he thought this was a way that maybe he would meet some girls. I think that was what he was.
Dig the shirt.
I don't know why. I'm imagining it's a tank top. Was it a tank top?
No.
Oh,
at a gas station? This was an actual uniform at a gas station when no man
but it's
alive.
New Zealand.
But it said
New
BP
Zealand.
on it.
No man alive has ever thought this is how I'm going to get chicks, but carry on.
But Ben, he was thinking, ooh, and he'd always, people would come in to buy, I'll put it in Luke, petrol.
Yes.
And Luke,
as they typically do it.
And Ben would point to his shirt.
Call it what it is.
He sees you're at the BP, baby, or something like that. But the problem was Ben has no practical skills, and he kept screwing it up. So Are you
telling just my stories? You're just telling my failures.
You did. You didn't. You kept getting in trouble.
What does screwing up at a petrol station look like?
I know.
That sounds dangerous.
I did a lot of shenanigans.
He had the lowest. It's like he wasn't a mechanic or someone like that has skill, but it was just put gas in the car, which is now they don't do that anymore. When I first went to New Zealand, they had a whole bunch of people that would put the gas in the car for you.
Petrol.
But they don't do that anymore. But back then, when Ben was doing it,
restate everything, over illustrate. Just
what? I'm just telling you. So that was so embarrassing. So then everyone, is Ben? What's his special thing? And I go, I don't know, because he worked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, which
we're
gonna get to your failures as a dad right after you're done here.
But he worked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That was his shift. Right?
Wow.
Am I making it up?
I'm just waiting
It
patiently
does
so I
sound
can
crazy.
slam you for your bizarre parenting skills.
So he worked for an hour and a half, and then he would go with Jody, his mother, out for lunch. He would spend all the money he made was gone from that.
No, I didn't pay for it. So what are you talking about?
Oh, Jody paid for it. So I guess I'm just happy that Ben finally made it through that period, because I knew that wasn't going to work very well for him at the petrol station.
You figured out what he can't do, or what he wasn't going to do.
Yeah. So
for those who
Why do Americans call a liquid gas?
I don't know, but for those who waited till the end, they're like, boy, I am glad I waited to the end. So you basically just took a job I had in high school and just made a story up.
What do you mean? That's what happened.
There was nothing to that story.
What are you talking about? How did it go at the BP for you, Ben?
I appreciated that story.
No, yeah,
I know something new about Ben.
I did make a lot of mistakes. There was several key notable mistakes. The very simple one was like you had to replace people's little gas knobs. I'd forget, because I'd be like filling up 5 cars at the same time. So that was a simple one. The more annoying one, though, was like someone would come up, and for some reason, people in New Zealand at that time apparently were struggling economically, because some guy would be like, "Hey, bro, I put $10 in $10 unleaded, whatever." And so, like, at first I'm like, "What is wrong with you? You're a grown man. You're putting $10 in your gas tank. Like, just fill the dang thing up. Like, do you want to be back here tomorrow? Because apparently you do." So, but the key was you had to take the little gas thing off, then put in $10, then put it in, and it would put exactly $10 in. Nobody does that
Not
anymore.
easy.
No, well, the problem is if you reverse order, you do 10. The second you lift up the thing, it resets. So I'd be off putting some gas in somebody else's car. I'd come back. Lo and behold, $42.50 is in that dude's car. And that guy was not happy because, all he had was $10, from the fish and chip shop, $10. And so he was pissed because he didn't want to pay. And then the light bulb would go on and they would think, this is my moment to get free gas. But we had we will literally siphon it out of your car before giving it to you for free. Oh, yeah. So we'd get in these huge fights, and sometimes we actually did siphon it back out of their cars. The exact amount. It was a hardline policy. So I made all sorts of mistakes. But the bigger question,
sounds like
the
big
bigger
chaos.
mistake is, look, I don't believe in hover parenting. You got to let kids make choices. I was 15 years old. And my parents let me get a job with a 1-hour shift.
No, hour and a half.
That is got to be okay. At some point, do
Well,
parents
let you? Were you not there?
So you're telling me that you're still not giving any advice or guidance?
You weren't willing to work longer than an hour.
That is not true.
What's
wrong with a 1-hour job? What's the issue?
That's just stupid. If my son at 16 is like, I'm going to get a job, and I'm like, oh, good for you, go get a job, and he gets a 1-hour shift at a store,
1 hour a
I'm
day.
going to be like, bro, you are not getting that either.
But
Ask
you
for more
only
hours.
But you only worked on the weekend, didn't
Sometimes I wonder, like, what you and Mom were doing. Like, just were you advising us at all? Like a
What are you
1
talking
hour
about?
shift?
Did you work? You didn't. What I remember is you only worked on the weekend too. So it was only like
no. Weekend was 3 hours. That was the 1 3-hour shift. That's when Mom would take me to lunch. But then I had 3 1-hour shifts. It took me 15 minutes to get to work, 15 minutes to get back, and I worked for an hour. All I did was provide the 30-minute conjoining lunch breaks for the full-time people. That's all I did. So what? One guy could go on a lunch break, and I was there. And then the next person would come back and go on a lunch break, and I was there, and then I'd go home. And meanwhile, my parents were like,
it was your version of the paper round. You were like, you didn't want to do the paper round. You did
Luke
an hour.
never did any work when he was in high school. Did you?
No, I didn't need to.
Yeah, he was an aristocrat. He was like, would you like your pillow fluffed? Hey, you know, I really like this random story at the end because we can just let it roll. We can let it rip. I don't feel any pressure.
I was busy being a revolutionary.
Yeah,
you didn't work, of course.
Yeah.
Revolutionaries don't work.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah. Oh, your quality sucks, Luke. All right.
Yes.
Great. Love y'all. Send in your comments, concerns to luke@steiger.org. Hopefully, well, you'll be out for a few weeks, so we wish you well on your travels.
Thank you.
May you find what it is you're looking for out there in your world, young man.
I'll try.
If you see one of these, send us a pic.
I will. All right. I always do.
That was awesome. Love you guys. Talk to you next time. Peace.
Thanks for watching Provoke and Inspire. If you enjoyed this content, could you do me a favor and hit that like button? Leave us a comment because this ultimately is a conversation. Hit that bell thing, I think, right? And YouTube seems to be recommending another video for you to watch. Check it out. Stay involved. Also, provokeandinspirepodcast.com for everything else. That's it. Peace.